Don't be a bitch. Let's talk some numbers here.
Hello, my Trigger Happy friends. My name is Stevie Cade, and welcome to Film Trigger. Now, we have finally made it through all the live-action Batman and all the live-action Superman movies, so I'm going to do a ranking of each of their own separate video. Like, I'm doing the Batman live-action ranking in this video, and in a separate video, I will be doing a ranking for the live-action Superman movies, both of which I will include Batman v Superman and see where they land on each of those lists. And I'll tell you what, as much as I love doing that series, I'm so glad it's over. That was a lot of movies. I didn't think that Batman v Superman review was ever going to come out. It's just one thing after another. Ugh. But before we get started, if you could, hit that subscribe button and the little bell ding thing so you get notified every time I upload a new video. So without further ado, let's dive into my ranking of all the live-action Batman movies. And the bottom of the barrel on this list, at number 8, is at no surprise to anyone or to most people, Batman and Robin. Because this movie is a giant toy commercial, not really made for entertainment, it doesn't seem like. Although it did kind of succeed at that, but in a different way than Schumacher wanted it to, I think. But this movie suffered from an over-top cheese and corn. Like, the whole thing was just cheese and corn, all the way through.
Louder, come on, sing, come on.
Plus, George Clooney phoning in his performance through the whole movie. Seriously, this dude, like, no acting at all. He just said his lines. They probably had cue cards, I would imagine. Just like, what's my line again? Oh, yeah, no, Alfred, we don't do that here. That's how I imagine this movie was shot with him. And then they tried to loosely tie in new characters, like Barbara Gordon. I mean, Barbara Pennyworth. That was supposed to be Barbara Gordon, but Commissioner Gordon in these movies suck. So they tied her to Pennyworth because that makes sense somehow. And then you have Banekenstein, which is their version of Bane, which is Frankenstein, Bane. Not really Bane, just a guy they're calling Bane. Works for Poison Ivy for some weird-ass reason. A lot of weird-ass things going on in this film. And they almost got this really cool Nightwing origin story, but they pretty much dropped the ball and ditched it by the end of the movie, so good job with that, guys. The plot ultimately doesn't make sense, with Poison Ivy wanting to help freeze the city, because plants die that way, but she wants that to happen, because Batman sucks or something. But Schumacher did manage to pull together a movie that was so bad that it's good to watch and make fun of with friends and laugh at, and it truly, truly is. My son and I watched this for the review, and we had a ball. And we'll probably pop it in again sometime when we feel like having a nice pizza movie night and laughing our asses off at whatever ridiculousness is going on in this film. But overall, this movie is a result of a very high budget with poor execution. Moving right along on my list at number 7 with Batman Forever. After watching Batman and Robin, I went and changed my grade for Batman Forever because I kind of realized this movie's not as bad as I thought it was on my first review. It's still second worst on this list because it just doesn't fit. It's trying to attach itself to the Keaton Batmans, and it doesn't do that successfully in my mind. This movie suffers from not really knowing what it wants to be at times. They try to set a tone for a fun, campy film, a much more lighthearted film than we'd gotten previously, yet they still try to dive deep into Bruce Wayne's psyche and, the living the dual life. So it's kind of wishy-washy like that, and it doesn't match the other tones. It's two different visions by one director, pretty much. Val Kilmer was a pretty decent Batman, but not a good Bruce Wayne. Much like Michael Keaton was, he was very one note on either Batman or Bruce Wayne. I felt Michael Keaton was Bruce Wayne all the time. I felt like Val Kilmer was Batman all the time, no matter if he was Bruce Wayne or Batman, which I thought Keaton's films kind of got a pass because they weren't really trying to dive into that. But in this movie, they were trying to dive into that dual psyche thing, so it's very monotone to the whole thing. But Jim Carrey is the star of this movie, in my opinion, and his acting, I think, was superb and right on point for what a Riddler should have been for this film.
Very few people are both a summer and a winter, but you pull it off nicely.
And then unfortunately, the rest of the film surrounding him didn't level up to that with him. As I said before, it's a bright, fun, decent movie, but I always associate this movie as the beginning of the end of that series of Batman films. Coming in at number 6 is The Dark Knight Rises. It was actually kind of a surprise to me that this one landed so low in my ranking because at one point in time, this was my favorite of all the Batman films. Tom Hardy's performance was spectacular, and even though he's only 5'9", he feels much bigger in this movie because of his overpowering performance.
You merely adopted the dark. I was born in it, molded by it.
And the story does conclude in a happy ending for Batman, which Batman doesn't get too often. Sad for everyone else who thought he died, I guess. I didn't really think about that until just now. Yeah, fuck everyone else. Well, Alfred knows. Poor Alfred. Ultimately, the movie felt rushed. Like, I was very aware that this movie was not what they originally had planned, and they had to change gears after the death of Heath Ledger, which almost makes this movie seem like a standalone film trying to tie itself into the previous stories. It becomes a mixed bag of Bane, Talia al Ghul, Robin, and the Ra's al Ghul storylines, and they're hanging on a thread to fit all these into the story that already exists in this series. And they do that by forcing a lot of this movie's stories into the previous films. We get a whole bunch of new characters that we have to believe somehow existed in the previous movies in one way or another. They're just trying to jam-pack them into this film, and that's what dropped this movie to number 6 on my list. Up next is number 5 with Batman Returns. Such a good popcorn movie. It really is. If you want a movie that you can just pop in and have a good time watching, you know, shut the brain off for a little bit, this is it. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just the right amount of fun and twisted. Wonderful performances from the entire cast. Michelle Pfeiffer as the sexy Catwoman, she owned that role. Danny DeVito making things really weird. In a good way. Like, he succeeded at making the Penguin icky. But in my opinion, the film lacks connectivity. I don't really know why all these characters are interacting with each other, or if they are, what's keeping them together is very, very thin context. I don't understand why Catwoman is wanting to team up with Penguin to take out Batman. She wants to take out Shrek, but Shrek is working with Penguin, but for some reason she wants to team up with Penguin to take out Batman, and never once mentions to take out Shrek, who she does try to take out at the very end of this movie, suddenly. I mean, honestly, the Penguin doesn't need Shrek, Catwoman doesn't need Penguin, and Shrek should have been Two-Face. That's my complaints with this movie. And the third act does get very discombobulated. But again, shut the brain off, watch the movie. It's pretty fun. Definitely one I don't mind rewatching, especially in that, you know, not Halloween, not Christmas, right in the taint of Christmas and Halloween, that at the Kate House, we call that Xmas. Landing at number 4 on my list is something I didn't think was going to be at number 4 on my list, and that's Batman v Superman. If you guys have seen my review for Batman v Superman, you know that this is one of my favorite movies of all time. So why did it land at number 4 on my Batman movie ranking? Well, let me start off by saying this movie has everything I want Batman to be. Batfleck is like the quintessential, like, top shelf, everything Batman should be in the movies going forward after this. But where it pales in comparison with the rest of the movies on this list is that this is not really a Batman movie, in my opinion. BVS is more of a Superman film. And that's because we don't have any context of Batman before this movie. We get this Batman in this movie. We don't know what led up to this character. We're not really invested emotionally into this character yet. We don't really have much to go on with Batman except for what they're showing us in a small little window of Batman v Superman. And that's what knocks this down into number 4 on my list. One thing I'm very curious about, and I actually haven't written out yet, but for my Superman ranking series, I'm very curious to see where Man of Steel and Batman v Superman end up, because I love those movies. Moving right along with number 3 on my list is The Dark Knight. What a wonderful piece of cinema. A fantastic sequel to Batman Begins and a great evolution to that Batman. This movie was a spectacular leap for comic book movies, not just to be comic book movies, but to be taken seriously. Heath Ledger taught us it's okay to like other Jokers. You don't have to just, oh no, there's only Jack Nicholson. Only Jack Nicholson is the Joker for me. Then everyone saw this and they're like, well, I mean, they're both pretty good, you know? And now with Joaquin Phoenix, everyone's like, which one's the best? Which one? I don't know. I can't even do a Joker ranking anymore. Like, to me, you have Top shelf, middle shelf, bottom shelf. That's how Joker should be ranked in cinema now. And Heath Ledger led the way for that to happen. He made it okay to like different variations of the same character that you love. Not to mention his Oscar-winning performance that is nothing less than captivating.
I was right here. Who did you leave him with? Your people?
Which, in my opinion, is what holds this movie back from being in the number 2 spot, because when I think of The Dark Knight, I think of that almost as a more of a Joker movie and not so much as a Batman movie. Now, together, they are, yes, it's a Batman movie, but if you take Heath Ledger and that Joker out of that movie and put a different character in there with the same plot and everything like that, I think this movie would have been further down on my list. Which brings me to number 2 on my list. But before we get into the top 2, if you could, please, if you're enjoying my ranking, if you enjoy my videos, hit that subscribe button and the little bell ding thing next to the subscribe button so you get notified every time I upload a new video. It helps my channel, helps you get to follow me whenever I upload new crap that you just hear me ramble about, whatever. And yeah, to do it and like it and watch my stuff. And if you want, you can become a Patreon and get some extra content that way as well. But number 2 on my list is Batman Begins. This is the movie that started the now cringy term reboot. Not so cringy at the time because it took a character that we knew and were beginning to not love and then it breathed new life into it. It didn't try to piggyback on the Tim Burton films. It brought something new to the table, a quintessential reboot movie. It brought Batman into a grounded world that we could fairly relate to, someone that we could understand. We could almost put our feet into his shoes, and at moments in the movie, sometimes it feels like he's in our shoes. We get to see Bruce Wayne leave Gotham and explore the world for a while, become human, learn what it takes to not be the Prince of Gotham, not have everything handed to you on a silver platter. He had to relearn life. He had to learn to become humble of what he had, and not only that, but the city that gave it to him. And it fueled his integrity behind wanting to protect Gotham and really shows us how Batman, well, begins. And Gotham is alive in this movie. It's its own character, and I love that aspect of it, and unfortunately, it's something that I feel that other Nolan films lacked moving forward in this series. And unlike The Dark Knight, I feel like Bale's performance and the story being told can really stand on its own here.
I swear to God. Swear to me!
But it's still being enhanced by the antagonist of the film. But honestly, if you take those antagonists and you switch those characters out with different characters, different actors, different performers, and you put them in that same movie with the same situations, I feel this movie would still hold its same ground. That's not dismissing, Liam Neeson and the guy who played the Scarecrow, Cillian Murphy. Cillian Murphy, however you say his name. It's not downplaying their performance, but they didn't outshine Bale as much as Heath Ledger did. This movie is very balanced from the protagonist to the antagonist through and through. And the overall ambience of this movie is something that I've come to expect from a Batman film. And again, that comes back to Gotham feeling like its own character. Gotham needs to be its own character. There's a reason why Batman wants to protect Gotham, because it's its own entity that he is essentially protecting by fighting against. He's fighting Gotham to protect Gotham. It's a very toxic relationship, which seems to be Batman's thing. Which brings us to ultimately the number 1, the 1989 Batman movie with Michael Keaton. I almost didn't want to put this on this list because it seems so easy to put this at number 1. I feel like it might be number 1 on a lot of people's list and maybe not number 1 on other people's list because they just didn't want to be right on the nose with this. But this is number 1 for a couple different reasons. Much like Nolan breathed new life into the Batman series, this did it originally. This breathed new life into a cinematic world for Batman. It was the first time we saw Batman out of this campiness that had shrouded him for a long time since the 60s. Tim Burton did something different, and he did it well. He took chances, and they were bold chances, like bringing Michael Keaton on, a comedian, to play a fairly dramatic role, and he did a fantastic job and was not wanted. People apparently threw a fit when they found out Keaton was going to play Batman, but ultimately he won their hearts opening night, which seems to be a thing with fans. Nobody wanted Batfleck, then he ended up being awesome. Nobody wanted Heath Ledger as Joker, he ended up being the best ever in life. So maybe we should just wait and see how actors do before we throw our 2 cents in. Just saying. maybe we should be a little bit more self-aware of our own toxicity. Moving forward. As I said before, though, Michael Keaton's Batman just really seemed like Bruce Wayne the entire time, whether he was in the Batman suit or not. But this movie wasn't trying to dive into that dual personality on that deep of a level. And Jack Nicholson to this day is arguably still on that top shelf level Joker performance.
I am the world's first fully functioning homicidal artist.
What do you want?
My face on the $1 bill.
Which is something that I had to rediscover because to me, I was like, oh no, Heath Ledger all the way. After I saw Heath Ledger, and then after I saw Joaquin Phoenix, I'm like, oh man, those guys, those are the top shelves. And then when I rewatched this movie for this series, I'm like, oh, no, Jack Nicholson, this is the Joker. This movie reminded me that the Joker is a character and not so grounded as the newer movies have perceived him. He's still a comic book character, and this Jack Nicholson version really shows that side of him more than any of the other films. Well, maybe the Suicide Squad, but with Jared Leto, but that's weird. That's a weird one. I don't know. Anyway, back to the ranking. Although I might be a little biased at putting this at number 1 because I've essentially grown up with this movie. It came out when I was 6 years old. I saw it in theaters. The bat emblem, that's my bat emblem. That's what I recognize as Batman always. Even though I like the newer bat emblems, the newer symbols, that's always going to be the quintessential bat symbol. The Danny Elfman theme is forever embedded into my memory. When I die and my life flashes before my eyes, I'm sure this Batman movie will quickly pass by at one point in time because it's that much a part of my life and probably one of the beginning sparks for my love of cinema in general. So yeah, that's why this movie's at my number 1. Now this is my list. If you disagree with me, that's fine. Let me know your list in the comments below. I'd like to see where your movies land. Let's talk about it. Let's have a good discussion. And there you have it. There's my ranking for all the live action Batman films. What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? Let's discuss it like adults, please, in the comments below. I'll be down there actively discussing with you guys. I'd love to hear your thoughts and your rankings as well. Also, be on the lookout for my live action Superman movie ranking, which will be coming out very soon. I appreciate you guys so much for watching, and as always, stay trigger happy, my friends. Peace.